Welcome to Midnight Terrors, where the shadows whisper and the truth is darker than fiction. In the stillness of night, when the world holds its breath, we bring you 3 spine-chilling true horror stories in every 15 to 20-minute episode. No faces, no distractions, just immersive narration that crawls beneath your skin, paired with haunting soundscapes and minimalist visuals that let your imagination paint the nightmares. From unsolved mysteries to encounters with the unknown, each tale is meticulously crafted to deliver pure, undiluted fear. 2 new videos arrive weekly, like clockwork. Taunt your feed with stories that linger long after the screen fades to black. This is horror, stripped to its core. No fluff, no filler. Only dread. Subscribe, if you dare to listen in the dark.
I need to provide some very brief context so this story makes sense. I attend a mid-sized public university in Oregon, part of the state system. Some campuses, like Eugene and Corvallis, are huge and host massive all-day tour festivals where current students throw epic parties. My school is 2 hours from Corvallis, but every spring many students make the trek for Beaver Fest. I'd never gone until senior year, when I realized it'd be my last chance. My carload left Friday afternoon. Mason drove, with me, Lucas, Priya, and Diego squeezed into the back. At 6 feet plus each, it was cozy. 2 hours later, we rolled into Oakwood Commons, futilely circling for parking. Just when we'd given up, Mason sweet-talked a Theta Phi from his high school crew into letting us snag her reserved spot. Classic Mason move. We crashed at Mason's sister Emma's place, a junior on the track team, where her roommates cheerfully offered the floor. Having a couch was like holding VIP passes. We kicked off Friday night with a small pre-party in their loft, though the main Beaverfest riot wouldn't start until dawn. One more detail. Mason is impossibly friendly, so practically half the campus knows him. One acquaintance of his, Carter, is thorny, loud, insecure, attention-seeking, and always the center of chaos. Carter had mentioned he was also heading to Beaverfest, but hadn't said whose couch he'd crash on. He wasn't in our plans. Hour after settling in, we all trundled to the quick stop for booze and mixers. As we lugged our haul out, there was Carter leaning on the curb, arms crossed, watching us like a cat at a bird feeder. We froze, baffled. He hadn't been invited. Carter fell in beside us, quipping, "Surprised to see me?" Of course we were. No plan for him to join, no word he knew where we were crashing. We ignored him and trudged upstairs, where things exploded. Carter asked to hit our bathroom, then darted past us, barging in front of Emma at the door and declaring, "I'm crashing here," like he'd paid rent. Emma's jaw dropped. When Mason realized Carter lied to her, he lost it, fired him, out on his ear. Carter loitered in the hallway for 20 minutes, hurling excuses until Mason's cold stare finally sent him off. We drank the rest of the night away, swapping Carter horror stories. Later, we discovered Mason's share location had also been on for Carter, so he'd tracked us to Emma's. The next day, Beaverfest was epic. Free tacos, dance bikes, and beer pong tournaments all afternoon. By late afternoon, we reconvened at Emma's to rehash Carter's stalking stunt. Rhea, one of our friends, whipped out her phone. That little blue GPS dot blinked right on her screen on top of Emma's apartment. The dot leapt away like Carter realized we noticed him peeking in a Jeep. Borderline psycho. He'd shown up, twice after being told to scram. Yet we laughed and hit the fest's finale fireworks. Exhausted, we tumbled into the spare bed about 2 a.m. 2 hours later, I jolted awake to a crash from deep in the living room. Alone, I crept down the hall with an empty wine bottle as my only backup. The sliding glass door to the balcony lay in a jagged mess, a baseball-sized rock surrounded by shards of glass. Carter, no doubt. My pulse spiked when, from the corner of my eye, I saw the closet door handle wiggle. Carter had hidden behind it with a kitchen knife ready. I bolted upstairs, shook Mason awake, and together we crept back, only to see the closet thrown wide and Mason hauling out a massive chef's knife. Carter stood there, knife in hand, probably ready to ruin our lives. It was the most terrified I've ever been. We roused the whole crew, panned the apartment, and called the campus PD. They chalked it up to typical Beaverfest vandalism and left with a report number. Carter had dropped his location share, so no proof for detectives. At dawn, we packed up. Mason blasted Carter a final "get lost" text that never delivered. He'd blocked us all. Weeks passed in uneasy silence as our group returned to normal. Carter vanished from social media, but I still glance over my shoulder. That split-second jolt when the closet handle moved will haunt me forever. I hope never to see him again. If I do, I won't hesitate to hit 911. I'll update if anything else goes down. I need to provide some very brief context so this story makes sense. I'd just finished boot camp and was sent to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in Goldsboro, North Carolina, as a 24-year-old radio operator. I'm originally from rural Alabama, so being stationed in North Carolina felt like an adventure. My two best friends on base were Marco and Jenna. Back then, the three of us were inseparable. One Friday afternoon in late April 1996, Marco suggested a road trip to Wilmington to break the base routine. Jenna volunteered to drive her Honda CR-V. We piled in after duty, laughs filling the cabin as we pointed out our favorite Southern rock on the stereo. About an hour in, cruising down a mostly empty stretch of highway, Marco spoke up. "Did you see that Tahoe back there pull off? The shoulder?" I glanced in the rear view, a dark Chevy Tahoe trailing us at a constant distance. Not unusual on a highway, until Jenna changed lanes, and the Tahoe did too, again and again. Then its headlights snapped on. We were being pulled over. Jenna eased. Onto the shoulder. The officer who climbed out of that Tahoe wasn't wearing a badge or uniform, just black tactical gear and an unreadable patch. Instead of tapping on Jenna's window, he stood back, studying the CR-V, peering through our packed cargo, eyeballing her license plate and the Proud Airman bumper sticker. After a minute, Marco rolled down his window and called out, "Officer, everything okay?" Without a word, the man strode to Jenna's door and demanded her license and registration. She fumbled them over. He ducked back into his SUV for what felt like an eternity. When he finally reappeared, two more men in identical gear climbed out. Behind him, Jenna tensed. The first man asked, "Your dad in the service?" Jenna laughed and said, "No, we all are." At that, his posture stiffened, and he exchanged a look with his partners. "Drive safely," he finally said, tossing her paperwork back and stepping off. The Tahoe peeled out, tires screaming, and vanished into the dusk. We sat frozen until Jenna restarted the engine. Wilmington was a blast. Beaches, seafood, boardwalk games, but the incident faded to the back of our minds. A week later, Marco and I were in the rec hall watching local news when our blood ran cold. Two bodies had been found dumped in a roadside ditch, robbed, bound, murdered. The abandoned getaway vehicle was a stolen black Tahoe, reported taken months earlier in Ohio. We raced to find Jenna and made the call. We need to tell the police what we saw. In our report, every detail matched that killer SUV. I still shudder, thinking how close we came. If Jenna hadn't displayed that Proud Airman sticker, maybe they'd have dragged us out too. I'll never forget how a simple decal probably saved our lives. My name is Evan. I'm sharing this anonymously because it still haunts me, but I owe it to myself to finally tell it. 10 years ago, I was on a solo road trip from Maplewood, New Jersey to Midland, Texas, to visit my family. I hadn't been back in years, and it felt like it was long overdue. It was late at night, somewhere along a lonely stretch of highway near the Arkansas-Oklahoma border, when my car's engine began sputtering. I pulled over under the dim glow of a single roadside reflector and popped the hood. I fumbled around, pretending I knew what I was doing, though really, I was just killing time before calling for help. A few minutes later, I heard tires crunching on gravel. A plain white pickup truck parked behind me. The driver climbed out, mid-30s, wiry build, curly dark hair, and a ragged beard. He wore work boots and a stained jacket, and he walked up without a word, peering under my hood as if he'd done it 100 times. Relieved, I thanked him for stopping. He nodded, muttered he was a mechanic, then scoped out my engine. After a quick inspection, he shook his head and said I needed a part, something called a compression tester, that he didn't have on hand. He offered to call a friend. Then, almost in the same movement, he pulled out a small revolver and pressed it against my side. "Don't move," he said flatly. My heart sank. His voice was calm, eerily practiced. He rifled through my pockets, grabbed my wallet, my phone, and even noted my license plate. I didn't resist. Within seconds, he slipped back into his truck and drove off into the darkness. I stood on the shoulder, stunned. The cool night air felt surreal after such a shock. Eventually, another driver stopped to help, an older couple who gave me a jump start and directions to the nearest town. I made it to Midland safely, but anger and disbelief roiled inside me for days. A few months after the roadside robbery, I thought the worst was behind me, until the first odd letter arrived. It was late summer, and I was settling back into my apartment in Clearfield, Pennsylvania. The mail slot clacked, and I found an official-looking envelope from Baxter National Bank, addressed to Evan Marshall. Inside was a welcome letter for a brand-new credit card I'd never applied for. I tossed it in the trash, assuming it was junk. A week later, another arrived from TechWave Electronics, informing me that a $1,200 balance was due on a newly issued rewards card. My heart sank when I realized the thief must have taken my Social Security card from my wallet when he robbed me and was now using my identity to open accounts across the country. I spent the next 30 minutes on the phone canceling accounts I'd never opened, freezing every bureau, and filing an identity theft report with the FTC. But new charges kept appearing: car rentals in Nevada, grocery purchases in South Carolina, even a luxury hotel stay in Georgia. My credit report turned into a minefield of unknown inquiries and balances. Then came the call from my health insurer. Someone had received emergency surgery under my name in Atlanta, Georgia, a record that now sat on my permanent file. The thought of another stranger's medical history mingled with mine sent a cold dread through me every day for 6 weeks. I checked my credit, disputed fraudulent charges, and copied pages of police reports for my files. Nothing seemed to slow down the imposter. I grew paranoid. Was he watching me? Did he know where I lived? By fall, I decided to hunt him down myself. I set Google alerts for my full name plus new account, scoured online forums for identity theft tips, and even created a bogus email under a throwaway account, using it to inquire about items advertised online. One evening in November, I stumbled on a sale listing on Craigslist for a set of high-end power tools in Jacksonville, Tennessee, the same tools that had appeared on my Best Buy statement. Heart-pounding, I messaged the seller, "Still available? Interested." Over the next 2 days, we exchanged emails, and the seller, calling himself Pete, agreed to meet at a public parking lot to barter. I forwarded everything to the Jacksonville Police Department, pleading for assistance. They agreed to set up a sting. On the appointed afternoon, I bought the tools, and as Pete arrived in a red pickup, undercover officers moved in. He panicked, barreled out of the lot, and crashed into a shallow ditch a mile away. When they cuffed him, he was a wreck, hands shaking, stammering out that he'd only been selling stuff given to him by a friend. Under questioning, he confessed he and 2 accomplices had been targeting stranded motorists on southern highways for years, robbing wallets and SSNs to open credit in their victims' names. With his cooperation, police traced and arrested all 3. I finally felt a weight lift off my chest when the trio was convicted. Restoring my credit took months more: court hearings, credit bureau disputes, and endless phone calls. But by spring, my profile was clean again. That winter, I took one last credit freeze off my file. I kept the freeze in place for emergencies and shredded every document bearing my SSN. Looking back, I realize how easily someone can strip away your identity and how vulnerable we all are when we let our guard down. Despite the calm tone I use now, any unexpected call or misplaced mail still sends a jolt through me. I share this story not for pity, but as a warning. Never assume. It can't happen to me. Keep your personal documents close, monitor your credit monthly, and if you're ever stranded, stay aware. Even friendly strangers can turn out to be your worst nightmare.